Good morning, everybody. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County, and happy Aloha Friday. So a few of you heard if you're on early, no need to wipe your glasses or adjust your monitor. I am, and a few of you are wearing Hawaiian shirts. So we do celebrate Aloha Friday in Hawaii. That's Casual Friday, and it just seems like really good fun. And we have a nasty rainstorm out there, so I guess that's tropical rain. Seems appropriate for Aloha Friday. And also, I was looking at the National Day calendar. I heard Tatiana say earlier it's National Faye Day. Not really sure that's National Day, but it is National Pina Colada Day. And it just seems like if you do enjoy a pina colada, enjoy having a cocktail, you may want to do it this evening and celebrate Aloha Friday with a pina colada, because they're both very tropical. It seems very perfect. So welcome to our virtual meeting. The Professional Service Group is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. It doesn't really matter why. It could be that your own former organization had some reorganization of their own that impacted you. That actually happened to me twice. You may be taking your own career in your own hands by making a change in your career and doing your own job search right now. You may have been in your own gap. You've created your own gap to take care of family, whether young children or older parents, and you needed that time for yourself, and now you're looking to get back into industry. Terrific. We are here to provide you with a little bit of resources, guidance, education opportunities to help you become more efficient and effective in your job search. And so among the resources we do have a number of them. We do have our LinkedIn group. Our LinkedIn group is called PSG of Mercer County. If you write nothing else down today, please write PSG of Mercer County down someplace. That is the name of our group. It's a private group. You can find it, and when you search for it in LinkedIn, you can press the join button or join us or join group button. And then when you do, we'll put you in pending status, because what we will do is I will check either our mailing list or if I can, list of attendees at recent meetings. We only let you in, people that have been to our in-person or virtual meetings at least once. And you can send an email to me at psgofmercercounty.gmail.com, psgofmercercounty@gmail.com. So if you apply for the LinkedIn group and you're visiting here for the first time, not sure if we know each other, just send a note. Hey, David, I applied for the group, but I was at the meeting on Friday, and that's fine. Then I'll know that you were here. Our members share articles and job leads and all sorts of information. And so that's all available. We have over 1,570 members right now. So we do have a fairly large membership. And it's nice because the people that are in our LinkedIn group all tend to be people that understand the value of communicating and staying in touch with people in LinkedIn. So there's a good chance that if you reach out to someone in our group for some sort of assistance or guidance, they'll likely get back to you because they just understand and get the process. And the reason why we keep the group a little private, we're just trying to keep the list collectors and the name collectors out. We don't want people soliciting us, and that's the only reason why we do that ahead of time. We do also have a website, and you wrote it down already. It's called psgofmercercounty.org. So that's what you have to write down too. It's not just a landing page or a place with our calendar. It has over 120 pages of content. It's a very large and robust website. Among the pages we have right on the top of the menu, we have something called resources. In the resources page, there are icons and links to all sorts of resources outside of PSG of Mercer County. For instance, we have links to 15 other networking groups that are in the general area. It's not as robust as the Landing Expert networking list, and you can see that one on landingexpert.com, but we have links directly to 15 other networking groups, a lot of the PSGs in the area and others. We also have links to 25 other career resource groups, and those could be some of the state agencies, some of the lesser known job boards. So there's a lot of resources. Career coaches, links to career coaches are there. So there's that. And we even have one for like a personal wellness site. If you have any sort of wellness concerns, they do talk about in it, mental health type issues or stress management. And so it's there as well. So there are 41 links right there. And we keep our professional development e-learning tab updated as well. So right at the top, there's also a menu item called professional development. And when you go to that page, there's a link for e-learning. We now have 38 e-learning sites. Some of them are free, some of them have a subscription, some of them you pay for the class. So they're not all free, but the idea, it's one-stop shopping to find e-learning. And it's a great idea to brush up on skills or prepare for certifications or whatever else is needed. So yep, that's what we have there. We also like to celebrate landings. So if you don't mind, if you have a landing to report, what you can do is you can put that right in our chat. And I'll ask you, minimize your chat for using greetings to everybody, because we do use the chat for Q&A, questions and answers. And so we certainly want to minimize the opportunity of me missing a question that you may have, because I have to try and read through all of the hello chats, that sort of thing. So matter of fact, what is a good idea, we started it last week, if you don't mind, if you have a question for Amy or for us later, write the word question in the chat and then write your question. So, you know, if you had a question about what's a good site for job search, what's a good job board, what do you recommend? Question, what's a good job board? Put it like that, excuse me, because that way I'll be able to see right away that you have a question. Just make it a little bit easier and more efficient for us, because a lot of people do like to put other information in chat, like their contact information. So just to go over a couple of ground rules, please absolutely keep your microphones off. If you're not really sure, you can click, you can look at your GoToMeeting screen at the bottom. There's a little mic button, MIC. Make sure that's red or has a line through it. I will be checking throughout the program in case there's some accidental microphone that's left on. So we are just trying to keep background noise down. And you can keep your video on or off. That's your choice, no worries either way. I already told you about the questions. We're gonna use chat for Q&A. In today's program, we're gonna probably just take a pause every few slides. I'm gonna be scanning for questions. So we don't have a set Q&A break, but I'm just gonna look, and if we have a few questions, I will just quickly interrupt or excuse myself, interrupt Amy, and let her know that we got some questions. So we'll probably do that every few slides. So put your questions in there, and then of course at the end of the program, you can put your questions in there as well, and we'll have wrap-up Q&A then. Later today, the presentation will be posted on our website. We're getting that all prepared to upload, so that'll be ready. Also, this presentation is being recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is called PSG of Mercer County. It'll be there either late this afternoon or tomorrow morning. Just takes a little while to prepare the video, so we will have all those resources. Okay, so Amy, it looks like you are ready. And let me just make sure. It looks like folks have kept their microphones off. Oh, the callers are going to mute the callers. Okay, there we go. Good. So let me just say that I'm very pleased this morning to welcome Amy Warner. Amy is the Director of Talent Acquisition from iCIMS, where she is responsible for developing and executing the company's recruitment strategy. Prior to joining iCIMS in 2016, she held a variety of talent acquisition and finance-related roles at Cigna, J&J, and Goldman Sachs. She holds her Bachelor of Business Administration in Finance from Hofstra University. I'm a graduate too, and an MBA in Human Resource Management from Fairleigh Dickinson University. So PSG of Mercer County is just very pleased to welcome to you, Amy Warner.
So thanks, David. It's truly a pleasure to be here this morning. Even though it is a rainy, dreary day, we're going to bring some sunshine and talk about something that I know is important to everybody on the call, a more successful job search in 2020. So as I mentioned to David, I'm really happy to keep this interactive. So please keep the questions coming. You know, talking about employment, talking about the current landscape, talking about everything that we're going to talk about today. It's all very near and dear to my heart, and I could probably go on and on for far longer than the time we have allotted today. So I want to make sure the time is yours as well, and can keep it most relevant and interactive for you. So please keep your questions coming in the chat. And David, certainly feel free to jump in at any point and let me know what's on people's minds. So let's make sure oops, there we go. Okay, so my name is Amy Warner. As David said, I'm Director of Talent Acquisition for iCIMS, been here since 2016. I'm hoping that many of you are familiar with iCIMS. If you're not, that's fine. I will tell you a little bit more about what we do as it actually relates to people's job search, because we power our customers' hiring and their ability to win in their war for talent. We power the hiring process for 4,000 plus companies or customers around the globe. So a lot of times people don't think about what happens with a job application or how job applications come to be. We power that process. So we are a leader in that market. We've been in this space in recruitment technology for over 20 years. We have approximately 1,000 employees. We are based in Homedale, but we have locations around the globe. And like I said, we've got over 4,000 customers, and their names that you know. I'm not going to recite all 4,000 of them, nor could I, but companies like Amazon, companies like Microsoft, companies like Goldman Sachs. So these are names that you know, and odds are you've submitted an online application and have been on our software. So today what we are set out to talk about, but certainly we can pivot with questions and things on your mind, but we can talk about what's top of mind for employers these days, the road to a new career path, since I know everybody here is thinking about a new career path or potentially making a pivot, a change, really how to build your network. Networking is a topic near and dear to my heart, and I think something we can always get better at and be more mindful about no matter what our situation is. And then really some best practices in acing your interview, getting the offer, and really what happens once you get that offer in that time between offer and onboarding. So what's top of mind for employers today? I think I'll summarize with the fact that these are unprecedented times. Oops, sorry about that. Don't know why it's fast forwarding. If I'm hitting left, I don't know why it's going back, but I will speak to it. There are signs that the market is rebounding. So these are unprecedented times. As I've told my team of recruiters, some of them have not seen anything except a boom in low unemployment and a boom in the marketplace. I've said to them it's often a pendulum that swings from one side to another, and it will swing. Well, it's really swung overnight, and certainly nobody expected this global pandemic. We've got unprecedented unemployment. However, the good news is there are signs of rebound. The data that we have is beginning to show signs of normalcy. Many companies went on a pause, but applications, hire activity, they're all trending upward over the last few weeks, which is great news. While applications and hires are still down 15% and 25% respectively, companies are starting to open back up. Openings are starting to normalize and hopefully getting to pre-pandemic levels. So for all of us, this is a good sign. This is an indication that the job market could be in the initial stages of a rebound. As companies announce reopening plans, some companies are getting very comfortable with the remote work for the long term. I can use iCIMS as an example. We went home, we went remote overnight, and we've managed to keep everything moving incredibly well. So companies are getting more comfortable with remote, and many are planning a phased return back to the office. And for many companies, we're not returning to the same kind of place that we were. Leaders are reimagining how could work be done in a different way? Could it be done in a different structure? Could it be done in different locations? And then in our data, we also see that employees have more temporary positions open than they did pre-pandemic. And it's really because we're looking at how can work be done in a different way, potentially in other locations, et cetera. So what does this mean to you as a candidate? As a candidate, marketing your transferable skills in this fast changing environment, it helps demonstrate how you can meet employers' needs as they build their new organizations, building diverse, inclusive teams that can be more agile, post-pandemic. So we're going to talk more about transferable skills today and what that means and what it can mean in the next leg of your career. Okay, so thinking about rejoining the workforce or making a change in the workforce, I really encourage people to think about their transferable interests and skills. Like I said, going back, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, the workforce has changed. The supply and demand of specific roles and specific talent has changed. I encourage people to do some soul searching, talk with others, and think about transferable interest and skills. Share your job search and your situation with friends, with former colleagues. You never know who people will know, and what things may come to mind as you talk to individuals. They may help you think about your skills in a different way. So think about exploring developing skills needed for re-entry into your career of choice, which may have changed given the current situation, and think about the contingent workforce. Like I said, employers are hiring in different ways, and contingent, temporary contract-based workforce is something that you may not have thought about previously, but it may very well yield some great results either for the short term or possibly for the long term as well. David, I'll pause. Have any questions come in through the chat, or would you like me to continue?
There is a question for Amy. Let's see. When you upload your resume to an ATS, this is from Lucius. When you upload your resume to your ATS, it usually populates a form. Is the recruiter more focused on the information on the form, or do they look at the resume that was submitted?
That is a great question. So resume parsing, and this is part of our business. I would say, and I'll talk about this later in the presentation, keep it simple. Unless you're a graphic designer and are being evaluated by the amazing graphics on your resume, keep it simple, make it easier for the applicant tracking system to read. Some are going to be more user-friendly than others, and you may have noticed that already. I love to think that iCIMS offers the most amazing candidate experience, and we're the leader in making sure that content is parsed correctly and easily for you. But I know that some systems are easier than others. Make it easy on the system, make it easy on the recruiter, but content is super important, but keep it simple. Hope that answers the question. Okay, so the most important and transferable skills I have laid out here. When everybody thinks about skills, they're thinking about technical skills, and those are so important. But please do not forget about communication, intellectual curiosity, and in this world, analytical skills, things that are data-driven, decision-making. If these things aren't highlighted on your resume, if these things aren't top of mind when you think about what you bring to the table, I encourage you to take a step back and think about your experience, your successes as it relates to your communication, as it relates to your intellectual curiosity. What have you had to learn really fast, learn on the fly, and then what analytical skills have you brought to the table in prior roles? Make sure you highlight those, because that is certainly top of mind for many employers these days, and that will have you putting your best foot forward as you apply for jobs and as you interview. Okay, so let's talk about networking. I know this is near and dear to this group's heart. I know David strikes me as a wonderful networker just from our early conversation. So let's talk about networking. Approximately, depends on the company, but overall about 45% of hires come from employee referrals, according to SHRM. So I think everybody here has probably heard lots about the value of networking. It is so important to make connections. So how do you get employee referrals? How do you get a great network? Well, it's a verb. You've got to get one, you've got to network. So let's talk about the verb. Let's talk about networking. So when it comes to LinkedIn, activate your network with LinkedIn. By no means is this the only aspect of networking, but it's certainly a big part of it in today's world. So like I said, regardless of industry, the most transferable skills are communication, intellectual curiosity, the technical skills you bring to the table, and analytical skills and data-driven decision-making. The ability to communicate this comes through loud and clear with networking. So let's talk about LinkedIn. We suggest you develop a truly engaging profile, always opportunities to improve that, build your network, and then stay active and nurture your relationships. So we'll talk about each of these and what it means. So I'm going to call on Megan Pereira here, not live, but I'm going to demonstrate her profile in action. So Megan is a manager of inside sales and a colleague of mine here at iCIMS. I think Megan has an amazing profile. There are a lot of people that I work with that have great ones, but I'm going to choose Megan's for today to talk a little bit more about. Megan's got an engaging professional profile. She's got her title, she's got her location. Not everybody chooses to put the exact city. I do not put the exact city, but it's really up to you. But take a look at this about section here. You really see her personality shining through. You see what she's passionate shining through, as opposed to just saying, you know, I'm the manager of inside sales. Yes, I know what a manager of inside sales does, and you know, most recruiters would as well. But take a look. Does everybody see the difference there? There's passion coming through. She's talking about learning and growing. She's talking about her positive and energetic personality. And this is not a copy and paste. If you know Megan, this is Megan. This is her. So I encourage everybody to take a step back and make sure your LinkedIn profile truly, truly represents you and what you want to put forth to the world as you approach your job search. So oh, David, were there questions? Did I hear a question from someone?
Or if you want to wait till the end of the slide.
Sure, absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit more about Megan's profile here. So in her about section, which we talked about, I love that passion coming through. She's got where she works. She's got her university here, and it looks great. So I see so many times people just really have the company listed and their title. This just really brings it to life. That's a word I use all the time. You know, a resume is a piece of paper. A LinkedIn profile is something on the screen. When somebody can truly bring that to life, either with words and a photo like this, or when they're on a phone interview or a Zoom interview with me, I love that ability. And again, that goes back to the communication skills. When somebody can bring it to life and make it more than a piece of paper, it's truly, truly fantastic. So continuing on Megan's profile here, she's got some endorsements, which are really nice, accomplishments, honors, awards. She's got some languages that she's listed. So really think about what you want to lead with. Think about putting your best foot forward. Elevate your profile, adding specialties, skills, featured projects, and recommendations. By the way, recruiters, think about recruiters on the other side. We are searching based on some of these keywords. We're searching based on these skills to find individuals and look through those profiles and connect with people. So, you know, if I'm on the other side of the desk and I'm looking for you, what words am I using? What words am I using to find you? And that's a great feature of LinkedIn and quote being found. It's just one piece of LinkedIn, but such an important one. So David, any questions coming in on the LinkedIn profile?
Yes, now there are a few. There's one from Frank. This was one of your earlier comments. Does the rebound have any significant trends like location, level, industry?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there are some industries that are obviously slowing way down based on what they do, and there are some industries that are booming. Think about things that involve delivery of items. You know, people don't want to go to the store, everything's being delivered. So anything related to supply chain could be incredibly busy. So it's taken a big hit on certain you know, industries, and other industries, I'm trying to build a deck on the back of my house, and good luck trying to get the color lumber that I want, because everybody has the same idea. So when I was making those calls last night, I'm thinking to myself, wow, some industries are truly booming from this. I'm sorry, the other part of the question was about industries, but then it was also...
Well, so does the rebound have any significant trends? And he was asking, is it by location, by level, or industry?
Yes, so let me touch on location. So we are seeing, just at iCIMS, there are a lot of candidates that are applying, and where previously, if we said the role is in Homedale, we would see local applications for people who wanted to work in Homedale. We're seeing candidates be a lot more bold, saying, I know it's listed as Homedale, but clearly everybody's working from home. You know, I might be listed, you know, I might be located in Chicago. I'm going to apply anyway. My advice in this market, apply anyway, because they actually might be getting more open-minded than you see. Don't just take the job posting as, well, it says Homedale or it says Chicago. They may be open-minded, or they may have an upcoming role where they say, you know, this role may be in this location, but I'd love to keep in touch with individuals because I'm going to have an opening in another month, and that role may be remote. So realize, kind of earlier in the presentation, like I said, employers are at a pivotal point right now where they're figuring out the new normal. That new normal could open up more geographic locations for you as well, because geography is becoming less and less of a barrier.
Okay, thank you. John's asking, what is the average number of resumes you get for each job?
Oh, that's a great question. It really depends on the company. So like David said, I worked for Cigna, Johnson & Johnson, way back in my career. I was in finance at Goldman Sachs, but it's an apple or an orange. It really depends on the company. A smaller company versus, a company like J&J where, you're talking about thousands of resumes a day. So it's really an apple or an orange. It depends on the company. And the way a company gets through that volume is going to truly, truly vary. So.
Okay. Simca is asking, given the keep it simple credo, what type of graphics are appropriate? I'm assuming this means on the resume. What type of graphics are appropriate? Are tables or colors okay?
Yeah, colors are okay. So I think colors are fine as long as they're not distracting. If you have like lots of different colors going on at once. I've seen some people do, their name in one color or, the headings in different colors. That doesn't bother me. When it comes through an ATS, the colors don't come through, it comes through black and white, and that's fine. But if somebody sends me a PDF of their resume, colors are fine as long as they're not distracting. My personal preference, I'd keep it to either black and white or black and white with one highlight color.
And well, she also asked about tables. So how about some of the structures that are available in Word that are not necessarily quote unquote simple?
Sure. So if somebody's putting a table perhaps with different skills, I've seen some people list the different computer programs that they're strong at, and that will come in a table. That comes through absolutely fine in a PDF. When it is parsed, you'll see it on the screen to see what it would look like in the system. So that should be fine. Basic tables are absolutely fine. It's when some people get really, really creative with graphics or indentations and different types of bulleting. Sometimes that can come through not in a way that you intend. It doesn't look as neat as it does in the PDF when it gets parsed into the system. Again, iCIMS parsing is top notch, but not, we have 4,000 wonderful customers around the globe, but not everybody is using a system as sophisticated as ours, and you want to make sure your resume comes through as clean as it can to the talent acquisition team.
Yeah, and that key point is interesting because remember, Amy is here talking from the perspective of iCIMS. There are other products in the market or maybe old versions of iCIMS, who knows. So you do want to keep it simple. Keep in mind that you're uploading to a wide audience. Let's see. Christopher has a question. Could you define an engaging profile?
Sure.
In under an hour.
And Andre, you guys getting the sense that I'm wordy.
No, just that I think we could do a whole presentation on that.
Yes. No, you absolutely could. It could be a whole presentation. Absolutely. So an engaging profile for me is where your personality shines through. I love to see when someone describes to me what they do for a living, and I can see where the sparkle is in their eye, when I can see when they truly love what they do. When I start talking about putting somebody in a role where their skills and abilities are being used in a way that's meaningful to them and meaningful to the company, I know that my eyes light up, because that's truly what I'm passionate about. When I see people, when I help someone at the right person, the right role, the right time, and they find the right role, and that magic comes through. When I talk about that, I know that my face lights up. So if you're looking at your LinkedIn profile, or have somebody else look at it, have somebody else look at your resume and say, does this really describe me? It's so hard. People are amazing, and it's so difficult to put that on one page. But the things that make you special, the things that you are passionate about, the things that you bring to the table, if that's not in your LinkedIn profile, you're missing out. It's a missed opportunity. So for me, I mean, if you knew Megan, you'd know that passion that she brings and what she loves about her career, and that's in there. So one of the things I like to say to people is, you've heard of the elevator speech, right? Tell me what you do, tell me what you're looking for, but it's got to be in the time that it takes us to go from floor 1 of the elevator, perhaps to floor 10. What's your elevator speech? Is your elevator speech captured in your resume? Is your elevator speech captured in your LinkedIn profile? The easier you can make it for the recruiter to understand that elevator speech in that few seconds, the greater the chance that you're putting your best foot forward. So to me, that's engaging. Being yourself, being genuine, that's engaging. You're so much, every individual is so much more than the sum of their work experiences.
So Carol has a question. Is there a publicly available document on how iCIMS parses resumes, i.e. formatting, items, addresses, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can definitely get that. David, if you want to send me an email, or actually if anybody wants to send me an email directly or connect with me on LinkedIn, I can get you some information on resume parsing. And you'll start to see, and you'll notice a trend when you're applying for jobs. You'll start to see iCIMS, and I'm not going to name our competitors here, but you'll start to see a trend in the format. I mean, I can look at somebody's career page, a company's career page, and not know who their ATS is, but I can tell by the format that it's an iCIMS customer. Sometimes in the URL, you'll see, the company name .icims.com, and you'll get a feel for the parsing and how that happens. But we can definitely get you some more information on that.
That's terrific. Thank you. And I think you'll see in a few minutes 113 emails in your inbox.
Totally.
Good. Another one from Jaconda. Does each employer have its own account to iCIMS? For example, I applied to a few companies that use the platform. Is the resume I submit for one company accessible to another company?
That's a great question. Yes. Sorry, was there another part to the question? I got excited.
Alternatively, is there a central iCIMS account that can be used to apply to companies that otherwise use the platform, similar to LinkedIn, Indeed, Simply Hired, etc.? That's it.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So when you are applying to Amazon, for example, your resume, for firewall purposes, your resume is only going to the recruiters at Amazon. So somebody in iCIMS customer service would be, if they were linked to that account and working on that account, could help log in and assist, but it is only specifically to that company, and that's for firewall and confidentiality purposes. So it would not be shared to any other iCIMS customers. So the data, yes, it is in the iCIMS platform, but it is not shared from company to company.
Thank you. Christopher has a question. Do you think it's advantageous if we propose creating a position to tackle a problem?
Creating a position to tackle a problem. Absolutely. I think that it's got to be done in the right way. I've seen some people reach out to me throughout my career and do that in the wrong way. And let me differentiate. I think coming up with a question, an opportunity to solve, and putting your toe in the water and getting to the right audience with that. Absolutely. I have an idea. I'd love to partner with you, things like that. I've seen some people come forward with a 30-page deck to send to something that they've clearly thought about over time, and have come through with a solution, but they may not really fully understand the problem. So I would say in the right way, that absolutely could work. The right way and the right person requires a lot of sound judgment. I'll leave it at that. Okay.
And Christopher has another question. He has a statement. I heard that PDFs throw off most ATS systems, question mark. So I'm assuming he wants to know if that's true with iCIMS.
Yeah, it probably really depends on the system. So it really shouldn't. In a more sophisticated ATS, you should have several ways to be able to upload the resume, but the parsing system, the ATS should tell you and give you specific instructions on what type of file to upload.
Terrific. That's it. Let's move on.
Okay, excellent. Great questions. So continuing on about building our network, connections are critical. So we were talking about the new normal, what's top of mind for employers. So here's our CEO, Steve Lucas. If you don't already follow Steve, he's puts out some amazing content, and he's very active on social media. And he's a big proponent of this and encourages leaders at iCIMS to do the same. So all of the leaders at iCIMS, I think you'll see, we're very active on social media. And this is something that he leads from the front with. He comments, he shares posts, he shares content. So LinkedIn is a give and take. I always say that there are people that use LinkedIn effectively for a job search or what they need or what they're looking for. But think of LinkedIn also as your way of putting information out to the world, potentially to help others. So ways that you can do this: comment or share posts from your network, post relevant industry news and updates, If you're not familiar with LinkedIn groups, please get involved in LinkedIn groups based on interests or goals, et cetera, and stay active in those groups relative to your industry or interest. It's also very easy to write and publish your own articles on LinkedIn. Much easier than you thought, much easier than you may think. The first time I published an article on LinkedIn, I think my hand was a little nervous, and I was, about to hit submit going, oh my goodness, I'm like putting something out there for the rest of the world to see. The second time I did it, very easy, publish. Write about topics you're passionate about or knowledgeable about. Weave in keywords or insight from other leaders in another industry or companies that you're potentially interested in. You can use hashtags so people can find out if it's an area that's trending. That's a great way to put yourself out there, get others to notice you, for you to share other people's content and help boost them. You've got to get out there as opposed to just using it as a tool to look. It's very much a give and take is the best way that I can describe it. So posting, here's some examples: posting, discover groups, engaging groups, publish it. So this is something I recently did related to Black Lives Matter. I posted something called Check on Me. I did this really, really late one night, and it was, like I said, I was nervous to hit post, not because of the content, but because I'm not a writer, right? My background is in finance and human resources. I am not a writer, but I did it and it felt great. And the second time I published, a whole lot easier. So get yourself out there. Okay, so social media. Let's talk about social media. 44% of HR professionals agreed social media profiles can provide information about work-related performance. So make sure you're publicly facing profiles, and that goes for everything. Every aspect of social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure you're putting out there what you want the world to see. Put your best foot forward, best face forward. Think twice about what you share, and also think about privacy settings. So many people don't realize the importance of privacy settings. Look, recruiters are not in the business of going to look for information on an individual. That's not part of our background check. We don't. But you do have to think about what you're putting out there publicly in your personal life and professional life. So applying for the job. So we've talked a lot about the applicant tracking system. It sounds like folks here are really knowledgeable about the process and have noticed things with parsing, etc. This is what our career page looks like. So this is an actual screenshot from our site, and it's a very easy way to apply. I would recommend, there's lots of different ways to find jobs, even from a Google search. You can put in, accounting jobs in Homedale, etc., and it will take you to various places. I think that a company's career page is the best way, once you research companies, is the best way to find a comprehensive list of what's open at that company. So here's a slice from our careers page. So how many people knew that employers are embracing text messaging? So far in 2020, more than 500,000 people have used texting to apply for a job. So my intention here is to let you know that texting is here to stay. People are applying, hearing about jobs through text. People are applying to jobs via links sent in text, and recruiters text candidates, and candidates love it. We have an amazing response rate. We have a product called Text Recruit, part of iCIMS, was a company we acquired a while back. Candidates absolutely love it. Email used to be the way to go. I know that I don't check my personal email until the evening because I am busy all day, so I check my personal email at night. But if this phone buzzes, and it's always next to me, if this phone buzzes, I actually can't help but look at it because it's right here, right? It's part of our world right now. So recruiters have embraced that. On average, it takes 7 minutes for us to get a response via text. That's a whole lot better than an email response, and which is a whole lot shorter than a phone call as well. So my point for you to, today as it relates to text is embrace it. It's here to stay. Candidates are loving it and recruiters are loving it as well. So let's talk about chatbots and artificial intelligence. So when you are on a career site and you see chat with a recruiter right now and it's 24/7, I promise you we are not working 24/7. This is artificial intelligence, recruiter chatbots. Recruiter chatbots will not replace recruiters. They definitely won't, and certainly they're not conducting interviews. But this is artificial intelligence in play in the recruiting world. So candidates can ask a simple question and the chatbot can respond if the chatbot has the answer. And eventually, if it gets to a point where the chatbot cannot answer through artificial intelligence, then it will be forwarded over to a recruiter. So technology in play in the world of hiring. I'll pause there because I know we talked tech for a while. Does anybody have any technical questions or anything come through, David?
I don't see technical questions about what we've talked about.
Okay.
Let's see what there is.
That's okay. Or anything else.
Do you find text recruiting is in certain industries versus others? That's from Stephanie.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think the companies that, many companies that truly love it, if you think about it, when you have critical mass or volume and you need to get the word out. So getting the word out via text can be incredibly effective with companies that have that need based on volume. So there are lots of industries that have truly embraced it. You know, iCIMS, we're a 1,000-person company. We're not a 100,000-person company. We use texting in a number of ways. One of the best ways that we use texting is to set up phone calls with candidates. Initial, can we talk? We have an opportunity that you've applied to or an opportunity you may be interested in. Let me know when you might be available. So you can see the calendar at the bottom, textrecruit.com/calendar. So we ask people to schedule some time. So it avoids the back and forth. And by the way, if they're in an environment where they can't speak freely, it's candidates embrace it and embrace the ability to do that without having the distraction behind them. But it's across many industries. I would say particularly areas with very, very high volume and getting those jobs out to people.
Terrific, thank you. And a question from Tatiana: what is a virtual recruiter at iCIMS?
A virtual recruiter. So we have a chatbot. So I have a real human, amazing recruiting team. And they are based in a couple of different places, but primarily New Jersey. But we have a chatbot. So if you were on the iCIMS career site and it'll say, ask a question right now. So that's a chatbot.
Terrific. Let's see. What access to control do individuals have over the data entered into the ATS?
Oh, that's a great question. So
Frank.
Individuals enter their own data. So I assume you're talking about data and privacy laws. So when candidates apply, they're asked for some basic information, and that's so that we can keep in touch with the individual. We follow all local laws, state laws, and laws vary by country as it relates to privacy laws. And we have a privacy email box where people can write in if they have questions about how their data is stored.
Okay, thank you. Just as a reminder for everyone on the call, please precede your question with the word question. Otherwise, I'm reading everything. It's a little time consuming. I don't want to miss your question. So please write question and then your question going forward. Here's one from Lisa. Are you seeing more organizations using ATS to automatically weed out applicants without looking at a resume now that there are so many more people applying?
Oh, that's a great question. So it really depends on how a company configures how applications come in. I can tell you at iCIMS, like I said, we're about a 1,000-person company. The thought of using technology to weed people out, I hope that people can see that I'm looking for every reason to weed people in. I want human eyes on the resume, etc. We're only a 1,000-person company, so I'm not working with critical mass where I have to weed people out. So I'm going to answer on behalf of iCIMS. We have some screening questions that say, are you eligible to work in the US on a full-time basis for iCIMS? Because that is required, right? Are you willing and able to work in location XYZ if it's required? So if you look at the requirement section of a job, oftentimes you'll see those questions replicated in those screening questions, because those are hardcore, I need you to be able to work in the US to work, on a full-time basis without sponsorship to qualify for this job. So those are knockouts. Most companies will use questions like that as a knockout, but I'm looking to keep those knockout questions to the absolute minimum, because I am looking to bring people in. I'm looking to cast the widest net. So that's how we're using that technology. Now, for a company that gets thousands of resumes a day, it is not humanly possible for them to go through, for many of them to have a recruiting staff to be able to go through all of those resumes. So think about maybe huge employers that you've applied to. They may have more screening questions than the few that we may apply. So they'll have their basics, there are knockouts. If the role is a role for an attorney, they'll ask the question, do you have a JD? That's a requirement, right? My guess is they're using that as a knock-in or a knockout. If you say no, you will be automatically knocked out because it's a requirement. If someone's applying for a role of a nurse at a hospital, do you have, are you an RN? Are you a BSN? That's going to be a knockout if it's required. But then there may be some other questions at these very large employers. There may be some questions of, check off areas that you have proficiency in, and it may be a list of things. You want to be truthful. Those are what I call nice to haves, right? Those nice to haves should match the requirements of the description, where sometimes you'll see, these would be a plus, and there might be a list. Now be truthful, but as you answer those questions, that may be, depending what's on the back end, that may be scoring your resume in terms of, let's say 1 to 10, right? On how closely you meet the nice to haves. So what a huge employer may do on the back end is start to look at the applications that are coming in, but they're going to look at people who score 9 out of 10. Then they'll dip down to people who score 8 out of 10. Then they'll dip down to people who score 7 out of 10. So there's a compliant way that they're looking at those resumes, but they're starting with the most qualified. Now, if they're looking at everybody, if they're looking at someone who's 8 out of 10, then they have to look at everybody who's 8 out of 10 and above. For compliance purposes, they determine where they're making that slice, and they're looking upward from there. So long story short, it depends on how the employer is using that technology behind the scenes, and it's going to be very different from a company that gets a manageable amount of resumes per day versus a company that gets thousands. Is that helpful?
Good, thank you.
For me, it's all about screening people in. We're not looking to screen people out. But
and I think
that's
your key
really
point,
the mystery behind that. That's the mystery behind the curtain. That's really it. There's sometimes I think there's this, notion out there that, that the technology is looking to weed people out. It's really, really not the case.
Yeah, and I think your point at the start of your answer, it depends on how they are using the system or the size of their company. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher is asking, do you find that a subconscious bias comes into play regarding disability?
Tell me more about the question, because that's not something that I would.
Yeah, and actually,
we don't ask. Some companies will ask, to self-disclose a disability. That information does not go to the hiring manager. That's really used. That's something that the companies who are a federal contractor, or OFCCP compliant, report in aggregate percentages. So that's not something that is looked at on an individual's application. And oftentimes the recruiter may not even have access to that information. It's used for more aggregate data.
Yeah, and I've heard this question before. It's EEOC type questioning that you're talking about. Of course, we talked last week about interview prep, that there are unfortunately illegal questions. This could be an illegal question depending on how it's asked. I think it's a big topic. But yeah, I think your answer is spot on, that at least on the applicant tracking system, it's more aggregate.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's see.
And people always have an opt-out. I mean, even when companies will ask race and gender, that's not for the individual's application, and recruiter is not looking at that. That's for aggregate data to see, are we diversifying our applicant pool, right, at the top of the funnel and at the bottom of the funnel. So a big role of a recruiter, and it's
Okay,
everywhere you look in terms of HR, is diversity inclusion, casting the widest net. So reaching out to the widest population of individuals. So if individuals do share race and gender, we can take a look. Are we casting a wider net? If people do declare their veteran status, whether they have a disability, that's us wanting to reach out to a wider audience and wanting to look at that big aggregate data up at the top for OSCCP compliance to say, are we doing what we want to do? And what we want to do is reach out to that wider audience to get that diverse perspective.
Great, thank you. Stuart has a question. At the top of the LinkedIn profile, you can supply a description of what you do. I guess that's the headline section.
Yeah.
I've seen profiles with a straightforward description or one that's a bit imaginative. And he gave an example, i.e. octopus to solve customer questions. Okay. Is the latter considered too cute or bringing imagination, creativity, and personality?
Yeah, so I think it really depends. If somebody's applying to or wants to, is in a field that is super creative, that may work really, really well. Think about it on the other side. So a recruiter's running a search. I'm going to use this example. I'm running a search for a CPA, you know, with 5+ years of experience in, you know, this type of accounting with this industry experience, right? So a recruiter's running a query. LinkedIn is a database, and then it will come back. You know, I'm looking within a 25-mile radius of 07733 at Homedale, and I get my results. And there's a long, long list. If somebody, you know, and a recruiter is looking at profile by profile by profile, if somebody has a title or a headline underneath that says something about, I think you said it was octopus, right? It kind of cut out for a second, but you said, right, it was like something super creative. That may not jump out at me like as quickly as somebody who says, you know, accountant with robust experience in XYZ seeking my next opportunity. Neither one is right nor wrong. The question for you as a job seeker to think about is, when someone is looking for me, what's that one elevator line I want to lead with? And if it's something super creative, then go for it. If it's, I want you to know that I'm a CPA with 10+ years of experience and my expertise is in something really niche, then lead with that.
Okay.
So it really depends on what you want to put forward, and you have limited characters. Think about that, it's pressure, right? I've got one line to say, take a look at my profile. And that's really the call to action. You've got your name, and you've got one line to be able to get a recruiter to open your profile.
Thank you. Dennis is asking, do you put graduation date, or if not, over 50? Is this a screener question?
I love this question. So the answer is completely depends. You do not have to put a year of graduation on there. I do not on mine. That's my own personal choice. There are some people, I get this question a lot. Should I list my early employment, right? It goes back to whatever year. And the answer is, it depends. So me personally, I want to list my first job on there because my first job was with Goldman Sachs, and I am darn proud of that. That was my first role out of school. So I will never take that off my resume ever, ever, ever. But if somebody has experience that's not relevant to what they do right now and they want to take that off because they were doing something that they're not leading with experience because it's just not relevant anymore, then that's okay to take it off. So I think that's so personal, and it really depends with, again, the story you want to tell. And keep in mind that story may not be exactly relevant to what you do right now. Maybe you had 10 years of experience early in your career doing something where you had to hustle so much and pay off school or you name it, and that got you to where you are right now. If that's part of your story and the fiber of your being, then put that on there and lead with it. But that's a personal thing that I can never give a rule to. It really depends on your unique story.
We do have a lot of questions coming in. Why don't we move through the slides a bit more?
Okay, good. It's an engaging audience.
We'll come back to them. Yep.
Okay, excellent. So preparing your resume to be read electronically. We talked about this. Keep it simple. There's lots of different formats out there. This format actually looks pretty similar to the format of my resume when I applied to iCIMS. There are different formats out there, and that's okay. You can find great samples of formats online through Google searches, but make sure the relevant content is on there. Make it easy for the recruiter for it to jump out. And I absolutely think tailor your resume to the application you're applying for. Right? Make sure the right words are there, but tell your story, right? If there's one thing that I can say to you today that you walk away with, I know we've talked about a lot of things, is tell your story. Put your best foot forward, and that involves your LinkedIn profile and involves every interaction with every person, and it involves your resume. So what story you tell to one recruiter, it might be slightly tweaked, to another recruiter based on the specific role or the company, but this tells your story. So we talked about simple format design. We talked about keywords that are relative to the job description. So let's talk about interviewing. So as my boss and I have said often since the beginning of COVID, you do not have to shake somebody's hand to hire them these days. So putting your best foot forward. Let's talk about interviewing in a post-COVID world. Many things are over Zoom. Many things that used to be over phone and then in person are now completely over video. So putting your best foot forward. So employers are looking into additional skills, things you bring to the table, your interests, your passions. You've heard me say the word passion over and over again. It's something that we truly value at iCIMS. It's one of our competencies. It's bringing your passion and yourself to work every day. And we want to see people who have that passion. So we have screening interviews. Many companies are doing assessments to measure your skills, probability or likelihood of success, behaviors, attitudes, personality assessments, cognitive assessments. So you may have experienced these already. Get comfortable with them. They're here to stay. Employers are embracing them more and more. And it really depends on the company on how they set up their process and what they're including in the early stages. So my best advice on interviewing, it's very much a two-way conversation. It's a give and take. Everybody's getting used to video interviews. I had the conversation with my staff last week. Is a phone interview a thing of the past? Because now everything is on Zoom. So get comfortable with Zoom interviewing, research the company ahead of time, ask questions, and genuine questions. I would say, recruiter doesn't need to know that you found the niche thing that happened at the company yesterday. Ask genuine questions that you really, really want to know about the company or the industry or, things about how it aligns to your passion. So ask genuine conversations about the organization and the opportunity. So when the good news comes, let's talk about the offer. So when you've gotten the job, just realize in this world, a whole lot of things are coming electronically. So excuse me, so offers are coming electronically, people are accepting offers electronically, and they're doing pre-boarding, so filling out information, getting ready for benefits, setting up information so their laptop can be mailed to them, because typically, certainly the world we're in right now, not everybody is in the office. So it's an electronic age, and we're becoming incredibly adaptable, and systems like iCIMS really help our customers win the war for talent all the way from early stages through onboarding the selected individuals. So taking a step back and kind of summarizing the hiring process, typically this is what it looks like. Recruiters are posting jobs and sourcing candidates. By the way, many recruiters are sourcing candidates well ahead of the need. We call that pipelining. We are getting ahead of anticipated openings and building up interest in a role. So don't just rely, this is my other huge piece of advice, don't just rely on postings for job opportunities. Oftentimes recruiters are looking for individuals casting that net well ahead of the posting. So recruiters are posting jobs, identifying candidates, candidates are applying, candidates are vetted, and at every company, that process looks different in terms of assessments, phone interviews, video interviews, etc. Candidates are screened and interviewed, and then a job offer is extended and the onboarding process begins. David, I'll pause for any questions so far.
You have only a few slides left. Do you want to wait till the end?
Okay, we'll continue on. That sounds good. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that people can land in the right opportunity. You can be introduced to a company in many different ways, including proactive outreach. We've talked about referrals. Proactive outreach, this is an exciting day and age for candidates and for recruiters. Back when I started in this business, recruiters reached out to candidates in a very different way, and candidates reach out to recruiters in a very different way. Now everybody can be found, right? Through the internet, for good and for bad, there is so much information out there and anybody can be found. If anybody wanted to know more about iCIMS, with a very quick LinkedIn search, they can find my entire team, right? It's so easy to find recruiters at any company or people in the department you'd love to work with at any company. Now, I'll say this with a word of caution. That doesn't mean send out blast messages to everybody. This requires very sound judgment. But everybody is accessible and the game has changed. And if done in the right way, that can be amazing networking, amazing connections, and can really, really, truly help your job search. So networking, employer referrals, virtual career fairs these days, in addition to applying for the postings. Hopefully you're hearing a theme here. Postings are great. It's not all about the posting. There's so much more that you can do proactively. So when applying for jobs, use the technology at your fingertips to be more efficient. Think about improving your searches, Google searches, chat bots, all the things that we talked about today to get your questions answered quickly. And my personal opinion, the best source of information is a company's website and their career page. So we've talked about a lot today. I love the fact that this team has been so interactive. David said it was a great group. You really were absolutely correct. Like I said, I love this topic. I love the right person, right role, right time, getting people to work in something that they're passionate about and helping companies win their war for talent. It's what I do. It's what I love. It's what makes me tick. And it's a pleasure to talk to you about anything that comes to mind based on what we talked about today or anything related to your searches. So I hope you found it helpful.
Well, thank you, Amy. And follow up on your point, I think right now you are the right person, right time for us right now. So thank you so much. Yeah, there are still a number of questions, so let's get through them.
Sure.
To them, I'm sorry. Phil's asking, do companies list jobs on their website that have already been filled?
Oh, that's a great one. I can tell you, we absolutely do not. So if you think about a recruiter's motivation, recruiters want to find people and want to draw people in to their top of the funnel. So I do not post anything. My team does not post anything that's filled. Now, I'm going to expand a little bit further. Sometimes companies post things for what we call pipeline. So we started talking about that a little bit. Pipeline is, I know I'm always going to have needs in this area, or I know I'm going to have some upcoming growth. So sometimes companies will post something that isn't an open seat today, but will in the future. Now, how a company goes about that is completely up to them. We believe very strongly in transparency. So if you go on our website, you will see some positions that say future talent, especially in this environment where unemployment is certainly higher than the world wants it to be. We want to be very transparent with candidates to say, like, look, this is for a future opportunity. We'd love to engage with you, but we want you to know transparently this isn't a seat that's available today. So you'll see some companies do that. That's our choice and how we exhibit that transparency. But I don't want to post something that's closed. Now, keep in mind, a job that's posted could be at the very tail end of the search. So we don't put dates on our postings. I know some companies do. When you're looking at a posting, it may be open for 5 minutes, or it may have been open for 5 months. And I feel bad for the recruiter if it's open for 5 months, but the role could be very close to close. So you don't know where it is in that life cycle. So even if your resume is a fantastic match, they may be close to done. So the hard part is you really don't know, but it can never hurt to apply, because even if they are close to closed, or if it is, they have their top candidate in mind and they're moving forward, they may have another opportunity right behind it.
Terrific, thank you. Or the top candidate has not accepted the position.
That's correct. It's not a done deal until the person shows up on that first day. It's
Right.
never a done deal. So, invest the time, apply, engage, and just don't get discouraged.
Thank you. So Stephanie is asking, for those companies using ATS, how many levels does a resume go through before human eyes touch the resume?
It goes right to the recruiter. So I think there's sometimes this vision of, things are getting knocked out, and then finally it comes to a human being. If you apply to a job, it literally is on the recruiter's website in less than a second.
Okay, From Shai, how does iCIMS help companies identify and include unique candidates in the search results that may not hit each and every one of the ATS expected answers? For example, experience over education, non-industry experience, etc.
Oh, that's a great question. So the knockout questions should only be for hardcore requirements. So knockout, like I said, are you eligible to work in the US on a full-time basis if a company cannot sponsor, right? So that may be a knockout. Do you have a JD? Do you have a CPA? Do you have the RN? Things that you absolutely have to have. We are moving, here's another shift in the economy that we could do a whole separate discussion about, skills-based hiring. Companies are getting further and further away from a specific degree. I'm not telling my college student this because you go and you complete the degree. I would never give the advice like necessarily start and don't finish, but companies are getting away from the hardcore degree requirements and moving much more towards a skill-based requirement. So I would say that's where we're trending. Tell your story. If you've got unique abilities, put that on there. At the end of the day, you're still going to have to meet the minimum requirements for the role. If the role requires the CPA, that has to be there. So you can't creatively get around that. And I use that because it's like the most tangible example I can give you, the JD, CPA. But if it says MBA is a plus and you don't have the MBA, talk about your robust business experience doing something else. Make sure that's in there. Lead with it. Make sure it's on your LinkedIn profile. If you have the opportunity to network with somebody and you don't have the assets that they're listing, but you have comparable things, lead with your story. So again, it can't get around the hardcore requirements if there are hardcore requirements. But on the flip side, companies are getting more and more open about what's truly required.
Great, thank you. Chakanda has a question. What do you do when the sorting questions do not have the correct options? For example, I have seen attorney positions that ask if you're a lawyer, but JD is not an option. It will list BS, MS, doctorate. I select doctorate because otherwise I'll be sorted out. Is it appropriate to contact the talent acquisition manager to have this corrected?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that could be so simple as the question was set up incorrectly by the recruiter. So this is powered by humans. Right? Great talent acquisition organizations have great technology and great recruiters behind them. If somebody posts the wrong question, it can happen. It's human error. So what I would say is answer the question to the best of your ability. It sounds like that's probably a canned question there, with the different levels, and JD's not an option. Absolutely, I would do the exact same thing. I would say doctorate because it's a Juris Doctorate. But if you have a question about that or you want to reach out to somebody in the talent acquisition team, again, do it appropriately. Don't reach out to everybody. Find a contact on LinkedIn and express your interest and just say, I'm so genuinely interested in this company for reasons XYZ. I applied to a role. I'd welcome the opportunity to connect. Here's why I'm truly interested.
Okay. From David, when weeding someone in, if a question asks how many years, ... if you put in more than what is in the requirement as opposed to the number in the requirement, are you weeded in?
So you can set a minimum. There is no compliant way to set a maximum. So if our job requires 5 years of experience in something, and if you have 10, that's a bonus. That's great. It should be scored in a compliant way. Anything above 5 counts as yes.
Okay. Thank you. Douglas asked, and this is posted to everybody, so I don't mind reading it. I have mild aphasia that affects my interviewing. Do I mention it?
So that's a great question. When somebody is looking for an accommodation, they should mention that to the recruiter ahead of time, and the recruiter will do anything they can to make that accommodation. So I think early on, if you feel comfortable mentioning anything you need for the process, recruiters are very accustomed to having those conversations.
Thank you. John's asking, how many resumes do you typically send on to a hiring manager for a particular position?
It's a great question. It's going to vary very highly by company and very highly by individual role. So there's no magic number. But I will tell you, recruiters are typically looking to do the vast majority of the work for the hiring manager. If a hiring manager is a director of application development, I want her or him focusing on application development and not focusing on recruitment. So the way I look at it is my team in an ideal world is consulting. I use these words, my team is the eyes and ears in the market for that hiring manager, and I'm going to go out and find what you're looking for. So the recruiter does a robust intake, finding out more about what the business needs, what would be an ideal skill set for this open vacancy. And then in an ideal world is really only putting a handful of people in front of the hiring manager. I don't want to put 10 people in front of the hiring manager. It's going to take more time and they'll have analysis paralysis, right? So it's really on the recruiter in a really consultative recruiting environment. The recruiter's typically looking at just putting a few in front of the hiring manager and doing it right. It's about quality, not quantity, but just a few. But there's a whole lot that goes into that few, right? So picture this big funnel. We think of everything in terms of a funnel. We're casting the widest net and we want a really wide top of the funnel. And at the very bottom, we're presenting a handful of highly qualified, ready to go talent to the hiring team.
Thank you. Christopher's asking, what is the best way to deal with gaps? And I assume that means gaps on a resume.
Gaps on a resume, excellent. So again, it's a personal decision on how to present that gap. If I can give you one piece of advice or one piece of knowledge on this topic, gaps are okay. Life is not linear, careers are not linear anymore, education is not linear. There are twists and turns and gaps for lots of reasons, tough reasons and really good reasons. And that's okay. It's what you want to lead with and how you tell your story. So don't cover it up. I will tell you, I've seen through 20 plus years of being in talent acquisition, some people try to cover up a gap and move the dates. It backfires. I've seen offers rescinded over it because it's an act of deception covering up those dates. Don't cover up the dates. Be yourself. Share, if it's something personal and you don't want to get into detail, that's okay. But don't cover it up. Recruiters know that life is not linear.
Okay. John's asking, does iCIMS pay for referrals? Do candidates who refer internally or external have a preference over the hiring cycle?
So there's no preference.
Okay.
Many companies do have referral award programs. What we have done historically is we have a raffle. We encourage referrals, and anybody who will listen to me, I will tell at the company, we all recruit. It's just some of us do it full time. I look at it as everybody's responsible for bringing top talent to the company. So we love referrals. But no, at the end of the day, the top talent gets the job. We do a raffle with all successful referrers, and they would win a prize. At the quarterly meeting. It's just kind of a fun thing that we do. Some companies do pay for referrals. It's not usually a ginormous amount. So there's really no preference. It's one source of hire. And I think at a healthy company, referrals are encouraged, but it's not your sole source of hire, because then again, you're not casting the widest net. It's one component of how we identify folks. So we have applicants, we have referrals, we have people that we outbound source through sources like LinkedIn or other sources, networking, university relationships, etc. It's one piece of the pie.
Okay, thank you. Stuart's asking, what are the top 3 mistakes that people make when using an ATS, other than the obvious, such as applying for a job which they are not qualified?
Sure. So that was the first one that came to mind, applying for a job not qualified. And there's a difference between not qualified and it's so far out in left field. Don't do the whole I'm going to check everything and hit submit because it's easier. The just spray and pray approach. So that's the biggest mistake. But aside from that, the biggest mistakes that people apply, I think, is getting dejected. I think the biggest mistake people make is relying solely on the postings and not doing all of the things that we talk about today. And I think people don't necessarily put their best foot forward. I said it before, I'm going to say it again, people are so much more than the sum of their work experiences. Lead with yourself, lead with your story. And I find that most people don't take time to stop and think about their story. Think about the story, self-reflect, bounce it off somebody you trust, and formulate that story, and that's what you want to put forward. And that's what people truly want to hear. Put your unique self first.
Terrific, thank you. Christopher asks, include a summary or not on the resume?
It depends. So I think it can be nice to tie all things together. but it doesn't work for everybody. You know, I was helping my college son with his resume, and you know, for that audience, it might not make sense. I'm a college student, you know, I'm looking for an internship in a COVID world, right? It's pretty simple. But if it makes sense for you, I think a nice, well-written summary, as long as it's unique. There are so many summaries that are, you know, just a copy paste from something in Google that has a whole lot of buzzwords of, you know, driven, passionate, you know, all kinds of words that just kind of filler things. If you can come up with true content that is based on what you're looking for and a true reflection of you, then absolutely include it if it ties it together in a bow.
Terrific, thank you. Dominic asks, can you think about putting in a new category for veteran status? Typically there are 4 categories, but many veterans and myself don't fit those categories. I am a non-combat veteran with stateside service, not recent veteran, disabled veteran, combat veteran, etc.
Interesting. So I would love to know more about that. The veteran population is a population we're always looking to do more outreach to and explore partnerships with. And I would love to learn more about that question because it's something I've never gotten before, and I'm not as familiar with those different categories. I know many companies will say, are you a veteran? And they're tracking that information again because we want to do more and more outreach, and that's one of the populations companies want to do more outreach to, but I'm not as familiar with the differences in those categories. So whoever asked that question, can I ask you to reach out to me directly? I'd love to learn more.
Right, so that's Dominic, and Amy did have a moment ago her slide with her contact information, plus it will be posted, actually it is posted right now on our website.
Okay, great, thank you.
Lynn is asking, can you discuss keyword matching and contextualization?
Sure. So keyword matching, some people think that keyword matching is the end all be all. It's part of the puzzle. So keyword matching. So think about everybody who's applied to a specific company. They're in their company's database. So recruiters will look at one source of potential candidates is let's look at people who've already applied to our company. They've already at some point expressed interest in the company that I work for. So why don't I source that talent, right? I'm not always waiting for the right person to apply. Maybe I'm going to go back and say, let's look at people who applied 6 months ago or a year ago. Well, how am I going to find the right people? There's 2 ways I can do it. One, I can go back to a previous posting that was something very, very similar to say, let's look at people who applied. Maybe they were silver medalists. That's the term recruiters will use all the time, silver medalists for a prior search. Or let me search the entire database and search for people with these skills. So that comes really easy when you're talking about specific technical skills, right? If somebody has Java, you know, you're looking for a specific technology. I would ask all of you as you think about your resume to think about, if I were a recruiter looking for me, what words would I be looking for? And do those words exist on your resume?
Terrific. John's asking, what do you think of Glassdoor?
What do I think of Glassdoor? Oh, that's an hour in itself. We're in a whole new world. We're in a whole new world where everything is transparent. When you go to a restaurant and you have a good experience, you may tell one person. When you go to a restaurant and have a bad experience, you tell your entire social media network. So that's whether I'm a fan of it on any given day or not a fan of it, it's actually not relevant because it's here to stay. And it's not just Glassdoor, it's Yelp. It's when you get your hair cut, it's when you get your nails done, it's where you get, you know, your car washed, it's where you applied for a job. People now can post anything and everything. What I encourage you to know as a job seeker, not everybody goes out there to glow, to say wonderful things. Oftentimes people use that as a tactic to say, I didn't get the job, or I'm not happy, or I had a bad experience, and maybe they really did. But consider the source, just like anything else, right? So it's a valuable tool, but consider the source. And I think take a balanced approach to it, but it's here to stay. I can tell you that it's held companies more accountable for things like candidate experience and employee experience, which is something we take incredibly seriously, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because everything's public these days. It's here to stay.
It's also nice to see companies that take it seriously respond to commentary on Glassdoor. Mm-hmm. So I think it helps validate the conversation.
No, it's very true. Now, keep in mind that if a company does not comment on something, it might be a calculated decision not to comment on it.
Sure.
They actually may not have, depending on the site, they may not have the ability to comment on it. Some of those sites, companies have to pay for a certain level of subscription to be able to comment. Now, on that site, nothing can be deleted, right? So those comments, companies do not have the ability to delete. Sometimes people say, oh, they get deleted because they weren't positive. We have zero ability to delete comments, but companies may have limited ability to respond. So it may not be that they genuinely don't want to respond. They may not have the ability to.
Terrific, thank you.
Sure.
William's asking, he's got a two-part question. The first part is about keywords that you just answered. So I'll go to the second part. How does the ATS handle a cover letter at the end of a resume? And so I guess that's when someone uploads the document, right? There's not a separate cover letter.
No, absolutely. So most people do not use cover letters these days, from my experience. So when applying for a job, it's more common that you will see a resume application, not a resume and cover letter. When it comes to cover letters, the system parses and knows the right information to capture. My opinion, in doing this 20 plus years, the cover letter has become less and less and less of a piece of the puzzle.
Okay, terrific.
But I will tell you what's become more and more important from my perspective is when somebody sends me an email with a resume, I don't necessarily need a whole cover letter, but I'd like a professional email that expresses why the person's interested, not just, could you take a look at my resume and see if I'm a match? And I get those. And I say to myself, like, there's a difference between just getting a PDF of someone's resume. I came across your profile. Could you take a look at my resume and see if I'd be a fit or what I'd be a fit to? There's a difference between that and I'm really interested in iCIMS. I took a look at your website. Here's why I'm interested. I'm a sales professional. I don't see anything posted specifically in my area right now, but as this opens up, or if you were to grow in this area, I'd love the opportunity to be in touch. Here's a copy of my resume. I'm looking at that going, that's fantastic. That person did their homework. They know why they're interested. They've looked at our site. They're either interested in something right now or in the future. And I look at that, and my recruiter mindset says pipeline. And I would encourage that person to keep in touch with our sales recruiter. So that's networking and that's effective communication. So again, there's no formal cover letter. In fact, it's less for me to click through, but a quality professional email that says why you're reaching out.
Terrific. Great advice. Thank you. Layston asked, if you do see a posting, what's a time estimate that makes a job posting too old and not worth applying to? For example, a job posting that is over 2 weeks old. Is that?
That's a great.
Yeah.
These questions are awesome. It is never not worth applying to if you want the job. That's my simple answer. You have no idea what's going on the other side. It could be open for 2 days and they had somebody in the pipeline and they're posting it, but there's a good chance this pipeline candidate will be the top candidate, or it could be open for 2 weeks, or I've got news, niche jobs, hate to say 2 months, and they don't have the candidate. You have no idea what's going on the other side, and you have no idea if there are jobs behind it. So if it is of interest, apply. And if you are even questioning, do I meet the minimum requirements? Do I not? Apply. You have it takes a few minutes. On our software, it takes even less because it's a great candidate experience. Apply.
Thank you. Michael's asked, are interviews questions about salary legal? And if not, how should we reply?
Great question. So nobody should be asking you in the state of New Jersey, nobody should be asking you about your salary history. They should be asking about salary expectations. So that is the new normal. You do not have to share what your salary history was, and I can go into the reasons why. It's a great law. You should be talking about salary expectations, but what that means for you, you've got to do your homework, right? Because what are your expectations for the role? They've got to be realistic. So you can have a conversation with the recruiter and you can say, I'm flexible, and the recruiter can be potentially transparent about what the role may pay or what they may be looking at. But if somebody asks you what your salary history is, my recommendation is to turn the question around and turn it into expectations.
Great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Okay. Is there a preferred software for your resume, Word, PDF, for the ATS purpose? That's from Vance.
Yeah, so follow the prompts of what the ATS is asking you to upload. If you're ever emailing somebody a resume directly, I would use a PDF.
Okay, so preference is PDF.
Preference is PDF for an email. When you're uploading it to an ATS, it will tell you what format. Yeah,
very good.
most likely. Yeah, exactly. So whatever ATS you're using will say, please upload your resume in XYZ format. But if you're emailing it directly to someone, my recommendation would be PDF.
Terrific. Amy asked, how do you get noticed when you have just a few years of experience for a job that asks for 5+ years, but your previous experience has many transferable skills?
Absolutely. So paint that picture. So recruiters will often say, you know, they want 5 years experience in XYZ, but if it's transferable skills, you want to lead with that. So if it doesn't jump out on the page, and again, share the resume with with a trusted friend or advisor and say, what does this say to you? What does this jump out of the page to you? If it doesn't jump out that you've got the relevant experience or transferable skills, make that shine. Make that shine on the resume, find a way to work that in, and find a way to work it into your LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Here's a question from Leora, and if you're on, I'm sorry, I don't understand the first half of the question, but I'll read the second half. What is your opinion about abbreviations versus words spelled out?
So I mean, on the ATS system, that's what my question.
ATS system, that's it. I understand.
No problems. So on a resume, I'd like to see words spelled out, like keep it a very professional document. But when recruiters are searching based on keyword, we're using Boolean search. And like if the word finance versus financial versus financing, we have ways to search for that where all of it will come up. So, years ago in the world of talent acquisition, people were consumed with that. It was like, what if I say finance versus financial versus this? We work that into our search string, but I don't want to see FIN on there because to me that sounds casual, right? If you're writing something casual, I wouldn't put in any abbreviations. If somebody is a manager of XYZ, my personal preference, I like to see, and it's not even for search string, I like to see manager written out or director written out or associate written out, as opposed to ASSOC, associate. I think it's a formal document. You'd want to make that look more formal. Does that answer the question?
Yes, but also regarding the tenses, that's what I meant. If it's in a past tense as opposed to active tense, will the ATS pick it up?
Yeah, so tense has nothing, there's no concerns with tenses on a document. My advice is just keep it consistent, and that's just for making it look really professional and really clean. But ATS has no issue with tenses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Next question. How does ATS filter for things like 5 years experience as a blank? And the blank, he gave examples, Scrum product owner or industry experience.
So the ATS is just uploading the resume and parsing it into specific sections. It's the recruiter, and then there's screening questions where someone may say, do you have XYZ experience, how many years, et cetera. The screening questions that are really, ranking, typically used to weed people in or to rank the resumes. But it's really recruiter eye that's looking at things like that.
Okay. Patty asked, if you don't have, say, farmer experience, but you could still perform the project manager job, would the ATS reject such a resume?
No, so ATSs don't reject anybody unless the recruiter is setting up, if the person does not have, like I said, the CPA, JD, et cetera. If it's a hardcore requirement, then the ATS, if the recruiter configures it that way, will set up an auto reject. But everything else is scored if it's an environment where they're getting thousands of resumes, but it's human eye and human review that's looking at that resume and making that call.
Okay, thank you. Lynn has a question. Does iCIMS have features for the HR department to set parameters? For example, if 1,200 people apply for a job, can they set it for a 95% match to bring it down to 100 candidates, and then set 98% to bring it down to 34, so there is a best match?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We do not have that critical volume. We're a 1,000-person company, so we don't have that critical volume where I'm saying, if it gets to this much, it's too much. The environments that I've worked in, very, very large companies, they do the scoring based on requirements and nice to haves. based on those questions. But those are the environments that I've worked in. There's nothing set up. I've never worked in an environment where it's set up that if it reaches this much, only show me this.
Okay. Leora asks, what if the application insists on your graduation dates?
It absolutely should not. A graduation date is not, it's whether somebody has the degree or not. I would never advise an employer to ask that. That's not something that should be asked. Unless there's kind of, I'm trying to think of, is there any industry around it where, you know, they have to do degree credentialing, you know, to make sure. I'm thinking like perhaps in the medical field, et cetera. But I've never seen it where the degree year is required in an ATS.
She asked for graduation on the application, so maybe it's on the job application. Is it used for reference check?
So background check, so not really reference checks, but
background, yeah.
Yeah, when companies do a background check, and the vast majority of companies do, they're verifying, so they're typically doing a criminal history. They are doing an education check, typically the highest level of education. They're not going to that school, by the way. There's an education clearinghouse where degrees are verified. They're not verifying the year, they're verifying the possession of the degree and work experience. And that's why it's super critical, where I said never move those dates around to cover up a gap. They're looking at your employer and the dates that you work there. So that's what's verified. I've never seen a situation where anybody's verifying the year of a degree.
Okay. Leora has another question. I'm bilingual in Hebrew. I've seen applications that omit Hebrew on the online application. Should I draw a conclusion from that when even obscure languages are in the dropdown, but not Hebrew?
I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to answer it in Hebrew. Lo, no.
I know that.
Okay. So when asking for another language, it's typically because we're working in a global world, and knowledge of another language is an asset. So if you speak another language, if you speak Ivrit, you're going to say Cain, you're going to answer. If you speak another language, do you speak another language? Yes. If they're asking specifically what languages, they should be asking languages that are a benefit to that role. So perhaps they do business in France and in Germany, and if they list in the description, the requirements, if they say, you know, speaking French or German is an asset, they may ask that in the screening questions. But if they ask what other languages you speak, there should be a section that says other. And again, the reason why a company would be asking about other languages is not to find out about nationality or other places that you lived. It's truly an asset to speak another language these days.
Okay. Thank you. William asked, do recruiters rank the applicants they send to the hiring managers?
So we don't rank them per se, but if I'm sending 3 resumes onto a hiring manager, you know, I may say to the hiring manager, I personally think that so-and-so is the strongest candidate, and here's why. So, you know, it's not necessarily an environment where a recruiter's handing over 3 resumes on a platter and saying, here you go, pick. Hiring managers often want to know what the recruiter thinks, because the recruiter has spent time and built relationships and, you know, spent time interviewing these candidates. So the recruiter typically will do a really nice write-up and say to the hiring manager, here's what I'm going to use the example with 3 people. The recruiter's going to, you know, give, here are the 3 resumes, but here's a write-up and here's what I found. This is what so-and-so really brings to the table. Here's the strength that somebody else brings to the table. So the hiring managers aren't just seeing a piece of paper. Again, going back to what I've said a number of times, bringing it to life. So I think a great recruiter brings that story to life to the hiring manager. Tell the hiring manager something that he or she cannot see on the resume. Tell me something interesting. Tell me why you're presenting this person to me. Out of the hundreds or potentially thousands of people you went through for this job, tell me why this person. So I don't think we rank per se, but we tell the story. Or good recruiters do, I will say.
Okay, thank you. These are all terrific. We still have a few more questions. I want to be respectful of your time. Are you good for a little while longer?
I am.
Okay. Good. So just good. Let's move on then. Layston is asking, what's your preference on resume length? Is it better to have 1 or 2 pages or any number of pages?
Oh, it absolutely depends. My resume is 2 pages. My college son's resume is 1 page. I would tell him, do not have 2 pages. You're not at the life stage yet where you have 2 pages worth of interesting stuff. Pharmaceutical companies, scientists, chemists will have 9-page resumes with drawings of compounds. So it totally depends. Make sure it's relevant. So if you've got 3 pages and you're thinking, should I make it 2? Or if you've got 2 and you think it should be 1, every word should count. Every word should be part of the story. And if it's filling up too much space and you think that stuff from way back is not so relevant to build out, you can shrink that down. Over time, I think it's normal for the prior experiences to get shorter and the more recent and storytelling experiences to get longer. I'll use myself as an example. I'm never taking that Goldman Sachs experience off my resume, but the description of what I did every day from 96 to 98 has gotten shorter. My story is I want you to know that I worked there. I want you to know that this was the foundation of my career, but I'm not going to have 10 bullets that tells you what I did in 1996.
Okay. Nancy asked, is there a category for some graduate school if you took some graduate classes but didn't complete the degree?
Sure. It really depends on the company. So some companies will ask highest degree obtained. Some companies, it depends on how they configure their dropdown. It's specifically a measure. It's dependent on how they configure it. If they're not asking it, if it's something you want on your story, put it on your LinkedIn profile and put it on your, put it on your resume. Graduate courses, graduate courses taken. And if that's something you want to lead with, absolutely put that on there.
Terrific. Glenn asked, how are companies and ATS handling overqualified applicants? People are applying for clerical when they have a college degree or a lot of experience.
Absolutely. So this is a new world. So number one, I hate the word overqualified because to me, overqualified means a bonus. To me, it's a bonus. If somebody has more requirements than you need for the role, well then, hey, employer, you just got a bonus. The question is, and especially in this economy, is the person willing to work in that role? Now, if the person is willing to work in that role and wants to be in that role for the longer term, it is not my role as a recruiter to make a decision on whether or not somebody wants that job. That is on the individual to opt in or opt out. So the minute I hear somebody say the word overqualified, to me, what they're usually getting at is this person really going to stay in the job? They're nervous. Like, are they going to stay or are they going to stay? This is a hiring manager talking. Or are they going to stay until they get something that pays more or something that's more senior level? But remember what I said, life is not linear. Not everybody's always looking to do this. Life is not linear and careers are not linear. And if somebody is looking to take a step back, take a step to the side, open to a salary cut, tell me the story. Let them tell me the story. But I am not looking to come to a conclusion on anybody on what their motivations are or why they want or don't want a job. To me, that's up to them.
Okay. Lucius asks, what is the best way to respond to the salary request when it's hard to determine the range for the position?
Yeah, that's a great question. So number one, there's a lot of research that you can do online, but also keep in mind that's people self-reporting. It could be very different industries, very different size companies. So you can do some research online, but it's not always going to give you the exact answer of what to expect. It is totally fine to say to a recruiter, I'm evaluating a number of opportunities. I'm unemployed right now, and I would love to hear what you can share with me on what this role is paying. I can let you know if that's something that's in line with my expectations. Usually a recruiter will want you to answer first what your expectations are. And I understand the candidate anxiety there with, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and say something too high, but I don't want to lowball. Candidates are really not looking to get the bargain. Recruiters are really not looking to get a bargain. Trust me, they're looking to pay what's market and fair for the role. But I would say have a conversation with the recruiter. Have an open, honest conversation.
How long might a company keep a resume on file in their database?
Years, many years. I love the ability to go back to people and say, came across your resume. Again, we talked about that searching based on keywords, searching based on prior applicants. So assume that they are keeping it. Now, don't assume that they'll always find you when the right opportunity comes up. It's a combination. It's a combination of them finding you and you finding them and you expressing interest. But no, assume that that's staying in their database.
Okay, very good. There have been a couple of questions about posting your contact information. So what I will let you know, everyone, one thing is I just posted it in chat, the same information that was on her last slide. And then it is the slide deck with her contact information is on our website in the meeting presentation document section. Still a few more questions. In line with keyword matching, what thoughts do you have regarding bigram analysis?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. Keyword matching.
In line with keyword matching, what thoughts do you have regarding bigram analysis? I've never heard of that before.
I haven't either. So if the person who asked the question doesn't mind expanding on it, that would be helpful.
Yeah, Frank, ask the question later again. We'll get to it.
Okay.
Lynn asked, touch on contextualization.
Contextualization. So tell me a little bit more about what you mean.
We'll have to wait for Lynn to respond a little later.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. What do companies do with assessment test results as part of the recruiting process for candidates they do not hire?
So the results are typically saved. So they're on file so that if the person applies again, they would typically not have to go through an assessment again. So it's for ease of the candidate's experience.
Okay. Frank asks, is a cover letter a differentiator in today's environment?
I wouldn't say overwhelmingly yes. I wouldn't say no. To me, the differentiator is doing the research, reaching out to the right person in the right way.
Okay.
That's the differentiator to me. And I'm going to go back to this example. Back in the days of, oh, I hear.
Oh, I'll go take a look.
That's okay. So to me, I'm going to give you an example of a differentiator, and it's a little bit of a pre-COVID example because it involves job fairs and in-person things, but I still think it's relevant when you think about how we communicate virtually right now. So picture a job fair, right? I'm sure everybody here has been to a career fair. Hundreds, thousands of people, recruiters, back in the days when we shook hands, right? So typically people will come up to the booth, and in a post-COVID world, they'll come up to an email, right? And it's, hi, tell me a little bit about your company. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. There's a difference between, hi, someone approaches the iCIMS booth and says, tell me a little bit about iCIMS, and someone coming up to the booth saying, hi, my name is Amy. I am in HR and I absolutely love what I do. I went on the iCIMS website and I learned that you make talent acquisition software. I don't fully understand that. I know a little bit about it. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit more because some of the positions you saw that I saw posted look really, really interesting. When I'm at a career fair all day, I will tell you there's probably in the hundreds of people that I will meet, fewer than one hand's worth, maybe 3-4 people will come up to me and say something that shows me in a real short elevator speech that they did their homework. They specifically came over to this booth to talk to us because they knew we were going to be here today, and here's what I'm hoping to get out of it. That's the differentiator to me. Great cover letters are great, but to me, that's the differentiator. And that shows the communication skills. We talked about those soft skills today that really make a difference. Somebody that prepares to do that, can't guarantee that they'll get the job, but I can guarantee you that they've just made a great connection, and that's a noticeable difference. And the recruiter will keep in touch with them.
Terrific. Since you mentioned the word recruiter, Tatiana asked, how do you find a responsible recruiter? I've got many calls and never heard from them again.
Like any function, there's good and there's bad. Absolutely. Yep. And it takes great technology and it takes a great recruiting team. Just like in any function, you're going to find people who are really responsive and really not responsive. I think it is a sign of the company. They're a reflection of the company. I take that, and my staff takes that incredibly seriously with representing the company and responsiveness. Most of the calls we make are to somebody who doesn't get the job. For each job, we're only making one call that says you did. But how people handle that, how they handle it with dignity, the responsiveness at every stage of the recruitment life cycle. I think recruiters are very busy and it can be very overwhelming. It's not an easy responsibility or role, but like in any other function, you're going to have some people who are much more responsive than others.
Thank you. And Dominic is asking, regarding salary, if the company headquarters is outside New Jersey, can you as a candidate still say, as a New Jersey candidate, we are not responsible to, we're not required to state our past salary?
We are not so
not
no,
required.
companies today should be asking about salary expectations. Absolutely. We even do that outside of the US just as a best practice, even though if a law permits us to ask salary history, like most companies now are really just focusing on expectations, not just because of the law, because really that's what it's about. I mean, if I'm asking you your salary history, what I'm doing is I'm coming to a conclusion for you on whether or not you'd want this job. And I'm in no way in a position to make a conclusion for anybody else. So, you know, if somebody made 80,000 and I have a role that's paying 40,000, maybe their life is such that this role would be great for them. Maybe they're not commuting to Manhattan anymore. You know, it's what are your expectations for this role? And if you're saying something far above what I can pay for the role, my response to you is, thank you so much for your transparency there. Unfortunately, I don't think we're on the same page in terms of salary. You know, I may share some additional detail with you, but if I can't, I'll say, you know, unfortunately, I don't think we're on the same page. What I'd love to do is keep in touch with you about upcoming roles that may be more in line with your salary requirements.
Frank asks, should we have two different resume formats available? One that would be reviewed by the ATS, while another, a more traditional format when someone requests a resume for human review only?
I think you should have different resume slight tweaks based on what you're applying for, because think about the story you want to tell for those roles, but there's nothing about the ATS where it can or cannot handle anything that you're giving to a hiring manager. So I don't think that's where you get the different formats. I think you get the different formats based on the types of jobs you're applying to.
Okay.
The ATS is not something to fear. It's something to embrace. It's looking to weed in, trust me.
I think the question is more along the lines, I've heard this before, more along the lines, if I have a pretty format resume that may be a challenge to the ATS to parse, should I have two different versions, the simple version and the pretty version?
I mean, you could. I don't think that's a very, very common thing unless you've got some really, really fancy graphic going above the top that you feel is really important. Like I said, if you're in a field of art or design, perhaps. But other than that, yeah. I wouldn't see that as a major differentiator.
Right. And certainly remember, there could be other software products that are not as strong, and maybe you would have to consider it. It seems like the iCIMS has very robust parsing. Let's see, Amy has a follow-up question to her one about experience a little early. As a follow-up to my question on experience, if the screening question asks, do you have 5 years experience, but you only have 4, but many years of other transferable skills, can you say yes? I guess means, can you say yes to 5 years?
Yeah, so the answer is to be truthful, but be truthful, but recognize, don't discount relevant experience or like sometimes the recruiter will say, you know, do you have 5 years of experience in XYZ or equivalent? Or equivalent gives you that ability to say yes, right? So look at the requirements of the role. And if you're on the fence, apply. The worst that can happen is they'll say no. I always say, if you're on the fence, apply.
Okay. This is from Christopher. What is the best way to get across that you have critical skills, but you not get them professionally?
That you have
critical skills, but you did not get them professionally.
Yeah, can somebody give me an example of what do you mean by a critical skill, but
so
did not?
I guess a skill that's a requirement on the job spec, whatever that skill may be. Maybe someone who knows Excel very well because they use it personally, but not professionally.
Oh, sure. So what I would list those skills on the resume. You know, you could take computer skills. People have amazing experience through volunteer opportunities. So don't forget about volunteer opportunities. So, and the leadership skills you get through those. I have a good friend who's an attorney and she's not working right now for life reason, family reason. She's got phenomenal experience through volunteer work. So list that. If she wants to list the organization, great. If not, just list skills learned through volunteer work. Or an avid volunteer, you know, she's got some amazing things that she's doing right now. Put that out there, lead with it, and don't forget about things that you're acquiring through things outside of your work. We are so much more, I'm going to say it again, we are so much more than the sum of the work experiences we've had. We do a whole lot of things outside of work, and make sure you think about those skills and present those as part of your story.
Terrific, thank you. This question from Frank, you actually answered earlier. Does iCIMS have users that have separate IDs for each company that uses your service? And you said yes, for security reasons. Yes, everyone is
absolutely secure. Right, and like the other iCIMS customers have no access to our candidates' resumes, applicant flow, et cetera, nor do I to them.
Tatiana asked, when I am applying for a job directly, after I upload the resume and it's parsed into the application, many fields are not loaded correctly. Does this mean my resume has ATS issues?
It may be that it's not as sophisticated of an applicant tracking system. If it shows you what it's looking like when it parses it, that's what it's reading it as, and it should give you the opportunity to make adjustments. It means there might be an opportunity to update, your format to make it a little bit more simple. But my guess is in that situation, it's probably just not a very sophisticated technology.
Okay. Dominic asks, what do you think is the best way to present skills?
So skills like technical skills or interpersonal skills.
He wasn't specific.
Okay, so the best way to
maybe similar to what we talked about before, the skills that are not always listed as professionals acquired.
Right. Put those on there. If there's skills acquired from volunteer work or other things, make sure you find a place to put them on there. I've seen people put skills. I've seen people put skills, abilities, interests. Sometimes people list on the bottom, interests, and they'll put something, I don't need to see somebody's professional interests, but if it's something truly unique and a differentiator, I can think back to probably about 20 years ago, I interviewed a postdoctoral fellow, and we were talking about toxicology, probably not something that I would normally talk about, how much of a drug someone can handle before it's too much. So we're talking about toxicology, not my area of expertise. And then I ended the interview with something I said, which I often do, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to mention? And he said, and this is 20 plus years ago, I still remember this. He said, yeah, I recently wrote a book, and it's science fiction. I'm trying to get it published. And it was like something super interesting. And it wasn't on his resume. And I remember thinking to myself, like, that is so cool that should be on there at the bottom, like lead with your PhD. But that should be on there somewhere, because think about the skills, the patience, the dedication, the determination. Like, there's so many life skills that he's going through that we didn't even talk about in the whole hour that we talked about toxicology. That should be on there. But do I need to see that, am I putting on my resume that that my family lives for baseball? Probably not. It's not that standout. So I think it really, really depends. It's really, and a lot of this is the theme of what we're talking about today, is what do you want to lead with as you tell your story?
I have a follow-up question with that, because when talking about resumes and having those like soft and technical skills and like trying to put them on the top, or at least that first page, there's kind of a question of like ATS systems don't like tables. And so when you want to list out some of these keywords, kind of like how is best to list out the keywords without messing up an ATS system. And so I can.
So I'm sorry, just before you answer that, folks, we have 99 people still on I can't allow us to ask questions verbally, and I'm sorry, Liston. Yeah, please answer this one, but please respect that process. We have too many people to have it done this way.
Yeah, no problem. So so many of them will accept the tables. If you find that they will not, and I'll use the example of people listing different technical skills they have, Java, etc. So I've seen people just use the tab feature, one word tab, the next word tab, or more of a bullet point format. Many of them will accept the table, but if not, I would try the tab over. It really depends on the sophistication level of the ATS.
Okay, and let's see, and we still have a lot of questions. When verifying prior employment, how far back does an employer usually go?
Oh, it's a great question. So first, you should know employers don't do it themselves. They're typically contracting with a third party. Recruiters are not making these calls to verify, typically, certainly for larger companies that I can speak of. Typically, a company will go back either a number, X amount of employers or X amount of years. So they may say 3 employers or 7 years. Some go right back to the beginning. So everything that you list. So number 1, make sure everything's correct and those dates are correct. I can't reinforce that enough. I've seen offers get pulled for dates being wrong. And I'm not talking about a date being wrong like August versus September because you truly forgot your start date. I'm talking about like playing around with the dates. It really depends on how an employer set up with their background screening, what their process is.
Dominic asks, what is the best way to overcome actual work experience versus skills knowledge when working with a company or recruiter? An example, I have issues where I have technology knowledge, but not actual hands-on work experience. How can I get someone to overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think companies are becoming more and more skill-based. We, started to allude to that earlier in the conversation. In fact, I just read an article about even the federal government and their hiring. They're looking at more skill-based versus, specific. I got the degree here, I got the experience here. So I think it's how you tell your story. Tell it on the resume, tell it to the recruiter, tell them your expertise and how you got it. I remember hearing somebody recently that talked about their computer programming expertise. They did not have the degree and they were completely self-taught. Don't hide behind that, like celebrate that. That's a differentiator. I didn't go the traditional route. This is what I did. To me, that shows extreme motivation, self-driven individual, like tell your story. And if it's not through on-the-job experience, if it's self-taught, online, you name it, to me, that's a differentiator. Lead with it.
Okay. Lisa asked, if a company keeps your resume indefinitely, how many times can you send additional copies for the changing jobs at the company?
Oh, you apply to every single job that you want to apply for. So just because they keep your resume on file doesn't mean they're considering it for that specific job. So they are keeping it as a record of applicant flow for that job, and they may delve back into resumes from the past. But if you're interested in the job, you absolutely apply, and you can refresh your resume or use a unique resume for that role.
Thank you. Karen asks, can an ATS maintain negative information if you were interviewed before and not offered the job?
So that's a great question. Depending on how the ATS is configured, a recruiter may be able to enter notes. Companies I've worked for in the past, recruiter notes were not saved in the system. The company I work for now, we do save recruiter notes in the system. Nobody's looking to save negative information. We're looking to save what skills somebody brought to the table. In fact, I don't want people saving negative information. I don't want that on record. So, typically when somebody's not getting the job, it's not for something negative. We identified a candidate whose experience was just a closer match. So what that may look like in the system, the interview notes from the recruiter saying that, the person has great expertise in XYZ, I'm passing them on to the next level. It's really, for us, it's the screening notes from that initial conversation with them to learn about, what they're hoping for in their next role, the skills they bring to the table. And we also know what they say their salary requirements are, just so we don't have to ask you that over and over and over again. Certainly if somebody has a change to their requirements, and if they note that, that's fine. But we capture some basic information, but it's all positive. There's nothing more going on behind the scenes there.
Great, thank you. Patty asks, will it make a difference for a candidate to be recommended by the recruiter to the hiring manager if the candidate keeps in touch with the recruiter over a period of time?
Keeping in touch with the recruiter over time can only help, right? But I think it has to be done in the right way. I've seen people, again, this requires sound judgment. I've seen people, check in every week. Has anything changed? Has anything changed? Has anything changed? Probably not the best way to go. So networking is an art. It's an art and a science. It's a give and take. It's got to be balanced. The recruiter reaching out to you, you reaching out to the recruiter and keeping in touch. I have to say my team does a phenomenal job of keeping in touch with people and hiring them. If they don't get the role right now or the right position isn't open right now, I've had recruiters reach out to candidates 6 months later, 2 years later, 3 years later saying, I remembered our conversation. I know we've kept in touch. We have an upcoming opportunity, or we have an opportunity right now that I think may be of interest. And candidates are blown away. They say, like, I know you said you'd keep in touch, but I thought that was you being a recruiter saying, you know, let's keep in touch. No, we really mean it. We really, really do. I have to say my staff is awesome and we do this really well. As you're doing this with other companies, make sure it's a balanced approach, right? That it's not too frequent. And I can't give you a rule on how many times to reach out versus not. I'll tell you it's an art, and just balance it accordingly. But yeah, keep in touch with recruiters. We love people and we love keeping in touch with people. And if you're keeping in touch with a recruiter and you land somewhere else, let them know. And when you do land somewhere, thank the recruiter, right? We love what we do and we celebrate someone getting that next role. If a recruiter had a strong hand in that, thank them. That's all we need. We live for like that thank you and that I'm so happy note that we get from candidates. It's what makes us tick.
So Frank had an earlier question, your opinion on bigram analysis. He followed up. A bigram analysis is part of natural language translation that analyzes the frequency of word pairs. One typically would want an opportunity by removing noise words, then reassessing keyword and bigram most common frequency.
Yeah. So I think it depends on how a company is using the technology and how sophisticated their artificial intelligence is. So, you know, most of the companies you're applying to are not so large that they're looking to weed people out and have this level of analysis. So there's some really cool things going on in artificial intelligence, but I really just want to dispel the myth of the ATS getting, you know, eliminating people. It's really about drawing people in.
Okay. And here's another follow-up question. This was from Lynn about contextualization. She was wondering if you can comment on it. Contextualization is when the parser reads entire phrases and not just keywords. In other words, the words before any, after the key, and after the keywords. Also, with over 200 ATS systems, they may not all be as sophisticated as iCIMS. So I'm thinking that your response on ATS relates to iCIMS, not all ATS systems.
Absolutely. So everything I'm giving you today, I'm giving you from my perspective. And like David said about my career, I've mainly worked for very, very large companies, companies that are getting in the thousands of applicants per day. And my experience at iCIMS is different. Now, number one, I'm working for a much smaller company than I've worked for previously. So we are able to be much more hands-on with every application that's coming in. And I love that about what my team's able to do now. We can take a very human approach to it. But there are some sophisticated artificial intelligence tools out there. So when you're applying to huge organizations, recognize that there is an element of technology evaluating the resume as well. But it is so much more human than people realize. In talking to friends and people who are in a search, I think there's really this vision out there that robots are reading things, and it's recruiters and a whole lot of coffee. There's awesome technology out there behind us, but recruiters and coffee.
Yep. IT people and coffee too.
Yes.
We'll do two more questions. We have a number that are left, but we've gone quite long today. I'm so grateful, Amy, that you've stayed on as long as you have. Let's just do a couple more and we'll wrap up. By the way, all the chat will also be available shortly in our website as well. Do you have any recommendation regarding the listing of volunteer work done for religious groups, etc.?
It totally depends on your preference. I will tell you that it's completely individual. If you have a story to tell and you do amazing volunteer work and it is with your house of worship and you want to list it, absolutely. If you're not comfortable listing it, you can list the skills along the way. I've seen people list the skills along the way without listing the specific affiliation. Obviously, if you're doing volunteer work with your house of worship, you're listing that and something personal that you're putting on your resume. There's no right or wrong. It's what you're comfortable leading with.
Mm-hmm. And certainly volunteer work could be very relevant work experience.
It's very relevant. It's a great source of networking too.
Oh, absolutely.
Great source of networking.
So we'll make Mark's question the last one for today. Are you seeing a larger number of applicants to each position due to COVID? Also, on average, how many applicants are you sorting through for each position?
So it's a great question, and it swings wildly based on the economy and the type of role, et cetera. We are seeing an uptick in applications. at iCIMS. We are seeing an uptick of people saying, forget the job location. I'm applying from place XYZ because I know you're all working from home. And that's okay. We all are working from home. So I think it's swinging wildly in a way that's kind of unpredictable. So I encourage you to think about your job search in a different way. Don't think about geographic barriers. They might not be as big of a barrier as you think. This is a wild ride for all of us and nothing we've ever experienced before. There's no playbook for this. We can't go back and say last time there was a pandemic, this is what happened in the job market. And I have some recruiters that have never seen a swing in the market. They've only seen 3% unemployment, 3.6% unemployment, and this is a whole new world for them. And the people who have seen it, we saw it in a very different way. We saw it, 08, 09 it was quite different than this. 9/11 was quite different from this. So, Y2K was very different. There's no playbook for this. So what I would say is think about those barriers that traditionally held you from applying for a job and knock down that barrier, because employers are knocking them down day by day. There's something new where we can think about the workforce in a different way.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much, Amy. This was just a chock full of wonderful information program. And
Thank you. What an engaged audience. You guys were fantastic. I love when it's conversational. So thank you so much.
And you brought such great energy to it as well. And so I think we're all riveted to our screens here. So thank you so much. And I appreciate having, we've recently met, we've gotten to know each other a little. Thank you for that opportunity as well.
My pleasure.
This has been wonderful. So folks, just want to quickly wrap up. And Amy, we'll follow up separately about those specifications on parsing resumes.
Sure.
If it's something that's public, if I can, maybe I'll just post it on our website as well.
Absolutely.
As long as public information.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. So that'll be available a little later. We do have on our website, on the right sidebar, a section of links. One link is called Meeting Presentation Documents. You just click on that link. It's kind of in the middle of the sidebar, and all of our prior meeting documents are there. So Amy's presentation slide deck is there. When she sends me the parsing recommendations, that will be there. The link to our YouTube channel will be there, and the link to the chat will be there as well. So all that information will be on our website shortly. Upcoming for the next couple of weeks, next week is July 17th. Paul Sakala will be here, and her program is Work Search Buddies, Finding Success with a Little Help from a Friend. It's very important to have someone that can help you through the process, someone that you trust, and it's really more than really just a spouse or a partner or someone in the house, someone who can really help you professionally. So that will be next week, the July 17th. July 24th, since we had a few LinkedIn questions earlier, Ed Hahn will be here. LinkedIn Beyond the Basics. Ed is a local guru on LinkedIn, always has wonderful information for us, and that will be in 2 weeks. All of that information is in the event calendar on our website. We have just chock full of information on our website right now with our event calendar. So take a look, see if there's a topic or program or a person that you want to make sure that you don't miss, and you can put that on your event calendar. Other meetings, other groups going on tomorrow morning at the Breakfast Club of New Jersey, 8 o'clock in the morning. Ashley Owens will present How to Not Suck at Networking. Very important and fun presentation. She's also a person who's full of energy. Check the website, thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com. It will be free to attend, but you'll have to get the connection information from there. On Monday at PSG of Central New Jersey, Ken Lang will be talking about using LinkedIn now. I saw Ken was on the presentation a little earlier. I think he's not here now. So you want to go to psgcnj.biz. The Career Support Group, the group that meets in Hamilton at the St. Gregory the Great Roman Catholic Church, they are now virtual as well. Check their website, careersupportgroup.com. Next Saturday, the 18th at 8:30 in the morning, Marty Latman will be giving a presentation as well. New Jersey Job Seekers, the oldest continuously running group in the country. They meet each Tuesday evening. So it'll be Tuesday at 7:30 to 8:30 in the evening. And you can find the meeting link in our PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group, as well as LinkedIn group of others. So that's what we've got coming up over the next couple of weeks. So once again, want to thank Amy Warner for being a part of this program. This was really special and spectacular. Thank you so much. And so otherwise, we will see you next week. Everybody, if you're available, I hope you can all make it. We will be sending out the email and posting on our LinkedIn group as well. And until we see you next week virtually, stay safe, stay dry, of course, with today's weather. And we hope to see you all very soon. Bye, everybody.